It all started with an innocent conversation about running for the school board together. My wife, Jessica, and I had always been a dynamic duo, tackling challenges side by side. I thought we were on the same page. Our kids were growing, and we wanted to make a positive impact in our community. We had our fair share of ups and downs, but nothing had prepared me for the storm that was about to hit. As the campaign progressed, I started to notice subtle changes in Jessica. She became more guarded, spending extra hours on her phone and making excuses for why she couldn't join me after work for dinner. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of the campaign. I mean, who wouldn't be a little on edge while trying to win over parents and teachers? But as the days turned into weeks, her behavior began to raise red flags. All the late nights at the office didn't add up, and my gut was telling me something was off. The turning point came one Friday night when I decided to surprise her at the campaign office. I had a delicious takeout dinner ready, thinking we could celebrate the end of the week together. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw her car parked alongside another vehicle that I didn't recognize. My heart raced as I made my way inside, hoping to see her hard at work, but what I found was a scene straight out of a nightmare. There she was, Jessica, laughing and flirting with another man, Tom, a fellow candidate who had been running against us. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I stood there frozen, watching as she leaned in closer to him, touching his arm while their heads were bent together, whispering secrets. I didn't want to believe my eyes, but everything inside me screamed that something was terribly wrong. The smell of betrayal was thick in the air, and it wrapped around me like a noose. I turned and left the office without a word, each step heavier than the last. When I got home, my mind raced with a blur of emotions: anger, disgust, and heartbreak. How could she do this to us? To our family? I needed confirmation before confronting her, so I spent the weekend replaying the scene in my head over and over, searching for any sign that I might have misread the situation. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen the look in her eyes. When she finally got home on Sunday, I confronted her. It was supposed to be a calm conversation, but when I asked her about the late nights and the chemistry I had witnessed, she instantly went into defensive mode. "You're being ridiculous. Nothing happened. You're just paranoid because of the pressure we're under," she snapped, her voice dripping with irritation. I couldn't believe the audacity. Here I was laying my heart on the line, and she was playing the victim. I pressed further, calmly revealing what I had seen. My accusations hung in the air like a thundercloud. Her face changed, and for a moment I thought I saw fear, but it quickly morphed into anger. "You followed me. You're such a creep. I can't believe you would do that," she yelled, her words cutting deeper than a knife. It was a classic deflection, a tactic I had seen her use before, twisting the narrative to make herself the innocent party. The emotional impact of that confrontation was overwhelming. I went from shock to rage in a heartbeat. I had devoted my life to this woman, to our family, and she was lying right to my face. I felt betrayed on so many levels. It wasn't just about the affair. It was the way she dismissed my feelings, the way she refused to take any responsibility for her actions. I had always seen our relationship as a partnership based on trust, yet she was willing to throw it all away for a moment's pleasure. I needed to collect my thoughts, so I took a walk around the neighborhood. The cool air felt good against my face, but it couldn't wash away the bitterness in my heart. I felt like a stranger in my own life. What was I going to do? I had to figure out how to move forward and fast before I allowed this betrayal to consume me entirely. The pain was raw, but I refused to let it define me. I had my children to think about. I had to be strong for them. As I walked, I began to formulate a plan. What would I do next? Would I confront her again, or would I simply walk away? I knew I had to make a choice, and it needed to be the right one, not just for me, but for our family. The days after that confrontation were a blur of turmoil and confusion. Jessica acted like nothing had happened, slipping back into our routine with an eerie ease. She busied herself with school board meetings and campaign events, her laughter ringing hollow around the house. I was still reeling from the discovery, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in a separate reality, one where I didn't exist, or at least not in the way I thought. I spent hours poring over my thoughts, trying to untangle the mess that had become my life. The anger would bubble up at the most unexpected times. I found myself snapping at the kids, feeling like a stranger to my own joy. They were oblivious to the chaos, and in many ways I envied their innocence. I wanted to protect them from this storm, but how could I do that when I was the one drowning? One evening, while I was washing the dishes, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it and my heart sank. It was a photo of Jessica and Tom at a bar, their arms wrapped around each other, clearly enjoying a night out. The caption was even more devastating. "Can't believe we pulled this off. Here's to new beginnings, school board couple." I felt the walls of my world close in as nausea twisted my stomach. In that moment, I realized I couldn't let her get away with this. This wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal that affected our children and everything we stood for. I needed to confront her again, but this time I had evidence. The thought of it fueled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. That night, I waited until the kids were asleep. The house was quiet, but my heart raced as I paced back and forth, rehearsing what I was going to say. Finally, I called her into the living room. She walked in, a casual smile on her face that quickly faded when she saw the look on mine. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. I pulled out my phone and showed her the message. Her eyes widened as she took in the photo, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of fear. But then the familiar defensiveness kicked in. "Why would you go through my messages? This is an invasion of my privacy." She shot back, her tone laced with indignation. It was infuriating. "You're so obsessed with being controlling, you can't even see how your paranoia is ruining this family. Don't turn this around on me." "I'm not the one who's been lying and sneaking around," I replied, my voice rising. "You need to take responsibility for your actions. This isn't just about you anymore." In that moment, the argument escalated. She started throwing accusations, claiming I was too focused on work and had neglected her needs. It felt like a twisted version of the blame game, and I was sick of it. "You cheated on me, Jessica. This isn't about my shortcomings, it's about your choices." Her demeanor shifted from defensive to almost pleading. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Tom and I we were just talking. You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she explained, her voice quivering. The tears began to flow, but I wasn't buying it. I had seen her with him, and I refused to let her manipulate my emotions any longer. "Talking? Is that what you call it? You didn't just talk. You crossed a line that you can't come back from," I said, feeling the anger surge again. "You need to understand that this has consequences." I could see the gears turning in her mind as she contemplated her next move. "I still love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We just need to focus on our campaign. It's so important to us," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same campaign that had brought us together was now the very thing that had unraveled our marriage. I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I was angry, betrayed, and heartbroken, all at once. But as I looked into her eyes, I also saw a hint of vulnerability. Was this a chance to salvage things, or was it just another manipulation? After a prolonged silence, I realized that I needed to take control of the situation. "We are no longer a team, Jessica. It's time for me to think about what's best for me and the kids. I can't be in a relationship where trust has been shattered beyond repair." My words hung in the air like a death sentence. Her face went pale, and I could see her grappling with the implications of what I was saying. "You can't mean that. We can work it out," she cried, but I shook my head resolute. "I deserve better than this. Right now, I need to focus on myself and our children. I need time to think," I said, feeling a strange sense of liberation mixed with sadness. I was taking a stand, but it felt like I was tearing apart everything we had built together. That night, I slept fitfully, my mind racing with thoughts of what was next. I knew I didn't want to wallow in betrayal, but I also couldn't ignore the pain. I had to figure out how to move forward and rebuild my life, even if it meant doing it without her. With each passing moment, I realized that my decision was about more than revenge. It was about reclaiming my own integrity and finding a way to be resilient for my kids. I had to turn the page on this chapter and write a new story for myself. The days following my confrontation with Jessica felt like I was caught in a whirlwind. I had made the decision to put myself and our children first, but I was still navigating the emotional fallout. The house that had once felt like a home now felt like a battleground. Every room was a reminder of the life we had built, and now it was all tainted with betrayal. Jessica tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. She would make breakfast for the kids and ask about their day, but there was an underlying tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. I found myself retreating into my own space, diving into work and spending more time with the kids. They were my refuge, my reason to keep moving forward. I wanted to shield them from the storm that was brewing, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to hide my own turmoil. One evening, as I was helping my daughter Emma with her homework, Jessica walked into the living room, the tension between us palpable. She had been trying to engage with the kids more, but her attempts felt forced. "Hey Emma, how about we do a little family game night tonight?" she suggested, trying to sound enthusiastic. I glanced at Emma, who looked back at me, clearly unsure of how to respond. "Maybe we could do it tomorrow," I replied, not wanting to put any more pressure on the situation. I could see the disappointment wash over Jessica's face, but I didn't care. I was still upset and angry about everything that had happened, and I wasn't ready to play happy families. Instead, I took the kids out for ice cream, leaving Jessica alone in the house with her thoughts. As the days turned into weeks, Jessica's attempts to reach out became more desperate. She pleaded for another chance, promising to go to counseling to be more transparent and to rebuild our trust. But every time she spoke, I felt the walls I had built around my heart tighten. I wanted to believe her, but the betrayal was too recent, too raw. Then came the news. I had been anticipating. The school board election was approaching, and I had decided to run solo. I had initially thought we would be a team, presenting a united front to the community, but now it felt like a chance for me to stand on my own. I wanted to push for educational transparency and accountability, values that I firmly believed in. I was determined to take the high road, to use this moment to turn my pain into something productive. The campaign trail was invigorating. I poured my heart into my speeches, advocating for change and connecting with parents who were equally frustrated with the system. With each passing day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer hiding behind Jessica's shadow. I was stepping into my own light. However, Jessica was not ready to let go of the narrative. She began to attend the campaign events, positioning herself as a supportive spouse. I watched in disbelief as she mingled with the parents, smiling and laughing, while I stood on stage delivering my message. It was difficult to see her play the part of the devoted wife after everything that had happened. One evening, after a particularly successful town hall meeting, I returned home to find Jessica waiting for me, her face flushed with excitement. "You were amazing tonight. Everyone loved your ideas," she gushed, but I couldn't bring myself to share in her enthusiasm. "Thanks, but I think it's time we have a real conversation about what's happening between us," I said, feeling the weight of the words on my tongue. "Can't it wait until after the election? We've worked so hard for this." She replied, a hint of panic in her voice. She was avoiding the issue, and I knew it. "No, it can't wait. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not," I asserted, the firmness in my voice surprising even me. "I need to know if we're going to face this together or if this is just for show." Her expression shifted from excitement to frustration. "You're being so unreasonable. I'm trying to support you and you're making this about us. Can't you see I'm trying to help?" She countered, her tone defensive. "Help? You mean help your image? You want to position yourself as the concerned spouse while you're still in a relationship." With Tom, I shot back, unable to contain my anger. "I don't need you to support me if it means you're just going to use this as a way to make yourself look better." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might actually absorb the truth of what I was saying. Instead, she snapped back. "It's not like that, and you know it. You're being so dramatic. I'm trying to make things right." "I don't believe you, Jessica," I said, my voice steady. "You need to understand that I'm not doing this for you anymore. I'm doing this for me and the kids. I'm not going to be dragged into your web of lies." I watched as her face crumpled, and for a brief moment I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to be strong, not just for myself but for our children who deserved so much better than the twisted game we were playing. As the election loomed closer, I felt the weight of my decision become clearer. I had to confront the reality of our situation, and I knew that whatever the outcome of the election, I was ready to take the next step, whatever that might be. I was not going to let Jessica's actions define me or my future. I was reclaiming my narrative, and this time, I was determined to write my own story. With the school board election just days away, I felt the pressure mounting. The campaign had become a lifeline for me, a way to channel my anger and hurt into something productive. The more I engaged with the community, the more I realized I wasn't just fighting for educational reform. I was fighting for my own sense of self-worth. I had become a man on a mission, and with every successful event, I felt the chains of betrayal loosening their grip on me. Jessica, on the other hand, was increasingly desperate. After each public appearance I made, she would approach me with a mix of admiration and frustration. "You're really making waves, you know. Everyone is talking about you," she would say, her voice laced with a hint of jealousy. It was both infuriating and sad to witness her trying to bask in the glow of a success she had no right to claim. "Talking is one thing, Jess. I need action and honesty, not half-baked support from someone who's lied to me," I replied one night when she attempted to compliment my latest speech. I could feel the tension crackling between us. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment I thought she might finally realize the gravity of her actions. But instead she shot back, "You're being so harsh. Can't you just let it go for once? This is a big moment for us." It was never about us anymore. It had become clear to me that what we once had was gone, replaced by a facade Jessica was trying to maintain. The night before the election, I found myself awake, running through my campaign speech in my head. I could hear the muffled sounds of Jessica moving around in the kitchen. Part of me wanted to confront her one last time, to lay everything out and finally put an end to this messy chapter. But I decided against it. I had a plan, and whatever was left of our relationship would have to wait until after the election. The following day, the excitement in the air was electric. I arrived at the polling station early, greeted by supporters, parents, and friends who believed in my vision for educational reform. Speaking with them reinvigorated my sense of purpose. I was ready to make a difference, and as I took the stage to deliver my closing remarks, I felt empowered. Today is not just about voting for a school board member. It's about voting for transparency, for accountability, and a future where our children thrive. Together, we can make this happen. My words echoed through the hall, and the cheers from the crowd fueled my determination. I could feel the momentum building, and for a moment I felt like I was reclaiming my life. Jessica was in the crowd, her expression a mix of pride and anxiety. I could see her wrestling with her emotions, and I knew she was feeling the pressure as well. After my speech, she approached me, her smile faltering as she took my hands in hers. "You were incredible. I'm so proud of you," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for a connection. "Thanks, but let's not pretend this is about us right now," I replied, pulling my hands away. "We both know where we stand." The weight of my words hung in the air, and for a moment I could see the realization wash over her. There was nothing more to say. We had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. As the polls closed and the votes were counted, the results came in. I had won. The cheers erupted around me, and I felt a rush of pride and vindication. I was finally on a path to enact the changes I believed in, and it felt liberating. However, in the midst of my celebration, I couldn't ignore the swirling emotions regarding Jessica. Winning the election felt hollow without the support of the person I once thought I could trust. That night, amidst the fanfare and congratulations, I knew I had to have that final conversation with her. As the celebrations died down, I found Jessica sitting alone in the living room, her face illuminated by the glow of the television. She seemed lost in thought, and I knew this was my opportunity. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, taking a seat across from her. "I know, and I'm so happy for you," she replied, "but I could see the apprehension in her eyes. "Thank you, but this isn't just about the election. We need to address what's been happening between us. I can't keep ignoring it," I said firmly. She looked at me, her expression wavering between hope and despair. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want honesty. I want to know if you're willing to fight for our family or if you're just going to keep lying to me," I replied. "I can't move forward without clarity." "I don't want to lose you," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I made a mistake and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. Just give me a chance." I studied her face, searching for any hint of sincerity. "You keep saying you want to fix this, but every time I turn around, I feel like I'm the one left holding the pieces. You need to understand that trust is earned, not given back freely," I said, my heart aching for the relationship we once shared. "I know that. I know I messed up, but I promise I can change. I want to be better for you, for us," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath. "Change takes time, and I'm not sure I can wait. I need to find myself again first, and right now that means stepping away from this relationship to figure out what I truly want," I said, feeling the weight of my words. The look on her face broke my heart. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away?" "No, it's not that simple," I said, fighting against the swell of emotion. "This isn't just about you or me. It's about what's best for our kids. We both need to take a step back and figure out who we are without each other." As the reality of my decision settled in, I felt a bittersweet sense of relief. I had taken control of my life, but I also knew that it would be a painful journey for both of us. Jessica looked deflated, and for the first time, I could see the cracks in her facade. "I never wanted it to come to this," she whispered, and I nodded, understanding the gravity of our situation. "I know, but sometimes letting go is the only way to truly start healing." I stood up, ready to leave the room, feeling the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was starting a new chapter in my life, one where I could focus on myself and my children, free from the shadows of betrayal. I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had finally taken a stand for my own happiness. The days following my decision to distance myself from Jessica were a mix of relief and pain. I felt liberated in many ways, but I also had moments of doubt and sadness. The reality of our separation began to sink in, and I was faced with the daunting task of rebuilding my life. I had won the election, and while that should have been a time of celebration, it felt overshadowed by the emotional upheaval I was experiencing. I threw myself into my new role on the school board. The thrill of initiating change in the educational system felt exhilarating, but every achievement was bittersweet. I often found myself wishing Jessica could be there to share in the triumphs and the challenges of reforming an outdated system. However, I quickly reminded myself that I needed to prioritize my own well-being and that of my children. Emma and Jake seemed to sense the shift in the household. They were young, but they were perceptive. I made a conscious effort to create a stable environment for them, filled with love and support. We spent more quality time together, game nights, movie marathons, and even cooking dinner as a team became our new normal. I wanted them to feel secure and happy, especially in the midst of the changes in our family dynamics. Jessica reached out frequently, her messages a mix of apologies, promises to change, and pleas for another chance. I kept my responses short and focused on the kids. I couldn't wade through the emotional turmoil of our past, not yet. I had made it clear that I needed time and space, but it was becoming increasingly difficult for her to accept that. Each time my phone buzzed with a message from her, a part of me felt guilty for not engaging more, yet another part of me felt empowered by the decision I had made. Then came the day she requested to meet. She chose a local cafe, a warm and inviting place that once held many of our happy moments together. I was apprehensive but agreed, knowing we needed to address our new reality. I arrived first, my heart racing as I waited for her. The cafe buzzed with life, but I felt like I was in a bubble, separated from everyone around me. When Jessica walked in, her eyes searched the room until they landed on me. She looked different, more vulnerable, perhaps a little tired. We exchanged awkward pleasantries before sitting down. There was an air of tension and unspoken words between us, filling the space like an invisible wall. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Of course," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee to buy some time. I wanted to hear what she had to say, but I also needed to guard my heart. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. "And I realize now how much I took for granted. I'm really sorry for everything that happened." I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "I want to understand how we got here," I said slowly. "What made you feel like cheating was an option?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "It was never about you. You have to believe me. I was overwhelmed by everything: work, the kids, the campaign. And instead of talking to you, I sought comfort from someone else. It was a terrible mistake," she admitted. "Jessica, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to betray my trust, and that's what's so hard for me to forgive." I felt the anger begin to bubble up again, but I fought to keep my voice steady. "How do I know you won't do it again?" She leaned forward, desperation in her eyes. "I understand why you don't trust me, but I'm committed to changing, to making this right. I've started seeing a therapist to work through my issues. I don't want to be that person anymore." I contemplated her words. Part of me wanted to believe that she could change, but another part of me screamed that I needed to protect myself and my children. "It's going to take more than words, Jess. Trust is built over time, and right now, we're starting from scratch," I said firmly. "I know that. I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she insisted, her voice breaking. As we talked, I found myself reflecting on all the good moments we had shared, the partnership we once had. It was difficult to reconcile that with the painful betrayal that had shattered our lives. "I need to prioritize my own healing first. I can't jump back into a relationship without knowing I won't regret it later," I admitted. "Please, just give me a chance. I miss our family. I miss you," she pleaded, and for a moment I could see the genuine desire for reconciliation. But how could I trust that desire was real? "Let's take it slow. I'm not promising anything, but we can start by focusing on co-parenting and seeing where that leads us," I suggested. It was a cautious approach, but it felt like a step forward without rushing into anything. "Okay," she replied, relief washing over her features. "I can do that. I just want to show you that I can be the partner you need." We left the cafe with a fragile truce, but I knew that we had a long road ahead. I felt a mix of hope and apprehension as I stepped back into my role as a co-parent. Maybe we could rebuild, but only if she was serious about making real changes and respecting the boundaries I needed to establish. As the weeks passed, we began to navigate this new phase of our lives. We set up a schedule for the kids, alternating weekends and evenings, and I focused on keeping communication open without letting it drift into emotional territory. Jessica was making efforts to improve herself, attending therapy sessions and reaching out to me more constructively. But every time I saw her, the pain of her betrayal resurfaced like an unwanted guest at a party. I was determined not to let it overwhelm me. I had learned to prioritize my own needs, and in doing so, I found a sense of strength I hadn't realized I possessed. Through this journey, I discovered the importance of self-love and resilience. I was learning that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was still unwritten. And as I held on to the hope of a new beginning, I also knew that I had to be cautious. I was slowly reclaiming my narrative, one day at a time, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to navigate our new normal. Jessica showed commitment to her therapy and made more conscious efforts to co-parent effectively. There were still moments when the weight of her betrayal felt like an anchor pulling me down, but I found ways to manage it. I focused on the kids, my work on the school board, and rebuilding my own identity outside of our fractured relationship. One evening, while tucking the kids into bed, I caught a glimpse of the innocence in their faces. Emma, with her golden curls framing her peaceful expression, and Jake, who still occasionally came running for a cuddle despite being 7. In those moments, I realized that my focus needed to be on them. They were thriving, and I wanted to foster that happiness. But the ache of the past lingered. There were days when I found it hard to shake the memories of Jessica's betrayal. It was a constant reminder of the fragility of relationships and how trust, once broken, could take an eternity to mend. Yet, through it all, I recognized the importance of forgiveness, not just for her, but for myself. I needed to let go of the anger that threatened to consume me. One Saturday afternoon, while the kids played in the backyard, I sat on the porch, reflecting on how far I had come. Jessica joined me, the sunlight illuminating her features in a way that made her look softer, more approachable. "I wanted to thank you for being so understanding," she said, her voice tentative. "I know it hasn't been easy for either of us." "I appreciate that," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "But I also want you to understand that we still have a long way to go. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." "Of course, I understand. I just want you to know that I'm working on being a better person. Not just for you, but for the kids and for myself," she said earnestly. There was sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time in a while I felt a flicker of hope. As we sat there, the kids' laughter echoing in the background, I thought about the possibility of a new beginning. Perhaps this wasn't just about us. Maybe it was about creating a healthier environment for our children, one where they could grow without the burden of our past hanging over them. "Let's keep focusing on co-parenting for now," I said, looking straight into her eyes. "We can take baby steps, and if things progress naturally, we'll see where that leads. No pressure, just honesty." "Agreed," she replied, and I could see her visibly relax. As the days turned into months, I noticed subtle changes in our interactions. We communicated more openly, and there was less tension between us. Jessica even started to participate in some of the events at the school, demonstrating her commitment to being involved in our children's lives. I admired her efforts, but I remained cautious, still guarding my heart. One night, after a particularly productive school board meeting, I returned home to find an unexpected surprise. Jessica had prepared a lovely dinner, complete with candles and music playing softly in the background. The gesture was sweet, but it also threw me off balance. "What's all this?" I asked, trying to mask my surprise. "I just wanted to celebrate what we've been building together," she said, her voice hopeful. "You're doing amazing things for the school and the community, and I want you to know I'm proud of you." The warmth from the moment softened the edges of my heart. We shared dinner, reminiscing about our early days together and laughing at the silly antics of the kids. I felt a sense of normalcy returning to our interactions, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. But as I looked into her eyes, I knew that the road ahead would still be fraught with challenges. I had to be careful not to get swept back into a cycle of pain and deceit. The memories of her betrayal were still fresh, and while I was beginning to forgive her, I understood that rebuilding our relationship would require effort from both sides. Over time, we began to form a new bond, one built on a foundation of honesty and openness. I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who was passionate, caring, and dedicated. It was a slow process, but each step forward felt like a victory. One evening, after a long day at work, I found myself sitting on the porch again, watching the sunset. Jessica joined me, a steaming mug of tea in her hands. "I want to thank you again for giving me this chance," she said quietly. "I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know I'm committed to proving myself." "I appreciate that, Jess. But remember, this is a two-way street. I need you to be honest with me always," I replied, feeling the weight of our shared history. "I promise," she said, her eyes meeting mine. There was a sincerity there that felt reassuring. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I felt a sense of hope settle within me. We were both taking baby steps on a long journey, but it felt like we were moving in the right direction. I reflected on the lessons I had learned through this turmoil. I had grown stronger, more resilient, and more in tune with my own needs. I realized that reclaiming my narrative meant not just healing from betrayal, but also learning to trust myself again. In that moment, I understood that our story was far from over. While the past would always be part of us, we had the power to shape our future. Whatever that future held, I was ready to face it, with my heart cautiously open and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, we would write a new chapter, one filled with honesty, growth, and the promise of a better tomorrow.